Hey guys, welcome to Comics on Screen. I'm Chris, and today we're going to be doing a very quick recap and review of Supergirl Season 1, Episode 7, Human for a Day. Now, being this the first time that I'm going to be talking about Supergirl, I thought I'd give a really quick rundown of my thoughts of the season so far. A lot of people gave the show grief in the first couple episodes because of tone, really bad dialogue, and what people thought were really bad characters as well. However, I think in the last few weeks it's starting to get better. I think Kara is becoming... I think Kara was the show. I mean, I think she has been carrying the show based on her personality and how she acts as Supergirl. I think the supporting characters are getting a little more interesting, and since they've introduced the whole what happened to Alex's father and Hank Henshaw mystery, the plot has gotten a little more interesting as well. I'm not a fan of the whole Astra and my mom's evil twin storyline. But I think episode by episode it is getting better, but it's also lacking in overall what is this season about. So I think it's just lacking a little focus on that. Getting into the episode, I actually thought this was the best episode of the season so far. Human for a Day takes the cliched superhero has lost their powers, which you usually see in every first season of a superhero show, and it actually turns it into one of the things I love about superhero stories is that when you don't need superpowers to be a hero. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. He's my favorite superhero, and I love stories when it takes Peter Parker to be the hero instead of just Spider-Man and punching and kicking and webbing his way out of situations. So this episode, it's kind of weird because it's kind of weird because they're saying that she exasperated her powers with Red Tornado and that she needs 48 hours to soak up the sun's rays or whatever. And the only thing is that if you get like a surge of adrenaline, you might be able to get your powers back. One of the things that's sort of frustrating about how they're doing this at this show, and I don't know if it's a DC thing, I don't know if it's Warner Brothers, I don't know if it's the show itself, but I feel like the show is really missing out on the opportunity of having Clark Kent as a mentor to her. Because James as a mentor didn't really work. Hank isn't a mentor to her, and Alex isn't really a mentor to her. And well, not every show needs a mentor like Barry, but I do think Kara could use a mentor, and we've never really seen Clark as a mentor to, superheroes before in TV and film. We've seen it in comics, but we haven't really seen it in live action, and it could tie it back to Supergirl's family theme. But they seem to either not want to use Superman or they can't use Superman, and I have no idea what that's about. But I really think that this episode in particular really would have benefited from having an actual Clark Kent. Kara gets her arm broken when there's an earthquake in National City, and the episode revolves around her trying to help people in a disaster without using her superpowers. There's a really powerful moment in which she puts on her Supergirl costume and goes and confronts a robber and is able to convince him to give up his gun by giving this sort of inspirational speech about, like, this isn't who you are, this isn't what you need. The only thing I didn't like about that is that it was paralleled with a speech by Cat Grant, and I feel like the show was then just hammering home what the general story was, which was, that Supergirl can give inspiration. And it's like, okay, we get it. You don't need to give us two speeches in one scene. The other thing about this show, with this episode in particular, is it finally features some really good Kara and James interaction that doesn't feel like they're trying to hammer in that they are love interests for each other. I mean, it does have a moment like that, but I feel in previous episodes, almost their entire dialogue has been that, and I didn't feel this way. James has this speech about his father, which is so good. He gives her this picture of his father, and then he has this long pause and sort of gulp in his throat. And then he says, his father never came home from the war. And I feel like, I don't know, it was a little moment, but it was so big because it was the most real reaction a person has had in this show. And I think him and Kara really work well in these intimate moments with each other. This, of course, just goes into, because Supergirl has 2 love triangles going on right now. They have Supergirl, Winn, and James, and then they have Supergirl and Lucy and James. And so it ties into Winn being like, he has a girlfriend, but then the Winn speech is so weird because he has a point, which James does have a girlfriend, and it's not really right for either of them to really even talk about this. I mean, it really even go into having feelings for each other. Because Kara's not really doing anything to stop it, and she knows that he's unavailable, and James he has decided to get back together with Lucy, and that's not really right if he is going to have these moments with Kara when Lucy's not around. But then he goes into this whole spiel about how, you're not normal and you're not going to have relationships and stuff. And it's like, in this universe, is Clark Kent and Lois Lane not together? Because this would completely disprove his theory here. But the episode ends with James kind of helping these people off an elevator, and then he falls, and she gets the adrenaline rush, and she saves him, and then she goes off and she saves a bunch of people in National City. The real thing I think people are really going to talk about in this episode is the reveal of Martian Manhunter. A lot of people have theorized this since his Hank Henshaw's eyes glowed red. But in this episode, the B story is, I think, plot-wise, it's way more interesting than the A story. But I don't, emotionally, the A story I think impacts more. But Alex and Hank and a few other soldiers are sealed off in the DEO headquarters while they're trying to track down an escaped prisoner, Jem, who uses telepathic powers to take control of people. Alex and Hank are constantly arguing because she believes that he is hiding a secret as to what happened to her father. He's trying to keep that secret away from her, and it kind of goes wonky. Alex kind of makes a couple decisions that don't entirely make a lot of sense to me, or she decides, yes, I'm going to take on the alien by myself. But Hank, she actually handcuffs Hank, and then he eventually gets free and is able to take down the alien. They have this conversation where he reveals that he's actually not Hank Henshaw, that he was an alien that her father tried to save, but Hank was so obsessed with killing the alien, and her father died, and Hank Henshaw died, and he's a shapeshifter, and he's taking control of that. Then he reveals himself to be Martian Manhunter, this really tall green alien, and as he says, he's the last son of Mars. Now, I've heard some people make a lot of parallels to him saying he's the last son of Mars and Clark being the last son of Krypton. And maybe this is their way to have a Superman character on the show, considering that they are able to do Martian Manhunter, but they're not doing Superman. I don't think that's what it was. I mean, maybe that's what it was, but I also think because Martian Manhunter is a big CGI effect, I don't think he's going to be featured a lot on the show. I actually think him saying he was the last person on Mars is because because it's such an expensive thing to pull off, that they're not going to do a story where there's multiple Martian Manhunters. That's what I think that was. But it was a really, really cool moment. Like I said, some people had already predicted it, but I'm also going to give props to the show for not dragging this out like some other shows have done, like The Flash in the first season, where it took forever for someone to finally have a confirmation that Harrison Wells was the Reverse Flash. I mean, I know it was kind of revealed to the audience, but I think thankfully the writers have kind of seen why that was a problem, and they've decided to reveal it to another character here in the 8th episode. And I think one of the questions is going to be, is Alex going to keep this secret from Kara? Is that going to result in a problem for the sisters? Or, what's going to happen? I think they run the risk of Martian Manhunter's story being more interesting than Supergirl's right now, especially since this episode ended with the return of Astra, which I so don't need. I hope the mid-season finale this week gets rid of this story, because it's not a very interesting story. But it's interesting. I mean, we'd have Supergirl and Martian Manhunter on the same show. That's really, really cool. But yeah, so I mean, I give this episode a 4 out of 5. I mean, I thought it was really good. There were a lot of really good emotional beats. The exposition dialogue wasn't so terrible as it usually is in these episodes. The Martian Manhunter thing was cool. Jem was actually a really cool villain. I feel like the only reason I'm upset about Jem is that I think they could have used him again, or maybe even lead to a bigger episode with Jem, where he takes control of Supergirl. That would have been really cool. But yeah, 4 out of 5. I thought this episode was great. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments. And if you liked the video, please press a like, hit subscribe. I'll see you guys later in the week to talk about the mid-season finale. So I'll see you guys then.